My name is Courtney Baxter, and I've been the education manager at the Peoria PlayHouse for the past 3 years, and I'm happy to have you for another story time. This time, we're talking about Juneteenth. Now, you might have never heard of Juneteenth before, or maybe you've heard of it and you're not quite sure what it is. It's kind of similar to the 4th of July or Independence Day in this country, but it holds a special significance for Black or African American people in this country. Juneteenth is called Juneteenth because it's on June 19th. It celebrates a special day on June 19th in 1865 when enslaved people in Texas finally found out that they were emancipated or free. That's why Juneteenth is also called Freedom Day or Emancipation Day by some people. Unfortunately, in this country, for about 300 years, starting in the year 1619, slavery was an institution in our country based off of racism. In this system, people who were Black or African American were considered lesser people, and by some, this was considered a good enough reason to enslave people. Being a slave meant that you worked long, hard hours, and you were not paid for that work. You weren't able to decide where you lived. You didn't get to go to school, have an education, or even get to learn how to read. It was actually illegal. You weren't able to vote. You weren't able to have the same rights as other people in America. Because of slavery, there are people who are considered abolitionists. Abolitionists, you might have heard that word before. Abolitionists believed that slavery needed to end. Some of these people were white and some of these people were Black who fought to get laws to end slavery. This even resulted in a war in America called the Civil War that happened in the 1800s. Eventually that war ended, and you might know a special president from Illinois, President Abraham Lincoln, who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery in the Confederacy. That was the southern states that rebelled against the United States of America. So all those slaves or enslaved people were freed during that time by the Emancipation Proclamation. But there were still people, lots of people in the South who were still enslaved regardless of the Emancipation Proclamation. And when the Civil War ended, there were still people who were enslaved who weren't aware that they had been emancipated. In Texas, because it's such a big state and kind of isolated, and also because people who owned people as slaves wanted to keep them for a longer amount of time, they just didn't tell enslaved people. But on that special day on June 19th, people who were enslaved did find out about their freedom. And Juneteenth is now celebrated in different parts of the country. You might have a street fair. You might have some special Miss Juneteenth pageant. Different ways to learn about Black history in this country. People sing songs, read poems, and one of the special songs that people sing a lot of times for Juneteenth is Lift Every Voice and Sing. It's kind of considered the Black national anthem, kind of unofficially. And I'll link some more about that at the end of this video. So we're going to read a special book to kind of learn about Juneteenth and to kind of see a little bit about Black history after the end of slavery. We're going to read Juneteenth for Mazie by Floyd Cooper. Mazie wants to play outside, but it's too late. It's getting dark, Mazie. It's time to stay inside. Mazie wants a cookie, but it's time for bed. Not now, little one. It's too close to bedtime. Mazie wants to stay up late, but she's too little. Bedtime is the rule, sweet girl. Why so grumpy, Sugar Bear? Asked Dad. I can go where I want, have what I want, or do what I want, answers Mazie. Well, tomorrow you can have a celebration, says Dad. What are we celebrating? Asked Mazie. We will celebrate the day your great, great, great grandpa Mose crossed into liberty. Liberty means like freedom. The day will be celebrated by us and many more families on a day we call Juneteenth. Dad lifts Mazie into his arms. I bet you're tired of hearing no all the time. Well, great-great-grandpa Mose heard no even more. Grandpa Mose worked in fields that stretched all the way to sunset. He and the other slaves, or enslaved people, would be bone tired, but they had to keep going. Their masters wouldn't let them quit, but as they worked, they thought about freedom. And before they finally went to sleep at night, they prayed about freedom and made plans for change and a better future. Some slaves ran north to freedom, following a bright star in the sky, using the stars to navigate. They sweat, they bled, and they cried, till those cries were quieted by a single proclamation from a brave president. Grandpa Mose heard that proclamation read from the balcony of the hotel on that warm June day in Galveston, Texas. Grandpa Mose heard nothing but cheers, saw nothing but happiness, and felt nothing but pride shared by all those around him. The cheers became dancing, the dancing became celebrating. It went on and on into the night. Grandpa Mose and the others had found freedom. They continued to work, but this time they were paid for their hard work. So they worked, and they saved, and they never forgot the moment they heard, the moment that changed their lives forever. But things weren't perfect. Black people still struggled to stand shoulder to shoulder with white people. They weren't treated as equals. It wasn't easy. But they never gave up. And every year on Juneteenth, they remembered. They marched for jobs, they lobbied for schools and the right to vote, they shouted for opportunity. And every year on Juneteenth, they celebrated and remembered. They learned and they grew. They forgave. They excelled and achieved. They became heroes. Now, sweet Mazie, it's your turn to celebrate just like great-great-grandpa Mose. It's your turn, Mazie, to eat some barbecue and drink some strawberry pop. It's your turn to celebrate and to remember. It's a special story to learn about Juneteenth, and it makes me think about my own ancestors. You might have heard the word ancestors before. Those are people in your family from long ago. They're part of your family tree. People like my great-great-grandparents were people who were enslaved in the South. And I know that being emancipated or freed probably was a very, very important day, but it must have been a nervous time or anxious time, but also full of excitement to be able to live another life more on your terms. We're still affected by racism from these times to this day, but we still have opportunities to learn and grow more. We're going to add some links here to help you out learning more about Juneteenth, more books that feature Black or African American characters for children, as well as a special link about Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is, like I said earlier, kind of considered the Black national anthem. So you can learn more about the history of that song and maybe learn some of the lyrics as well. I challenge you to think a little bit more about how we as a country, or individually you and your family, can celebrate Juneteenth. What does it mean to celebrate or remember our history with slavery? What things can we do to help our communities and help grow together in unity? Thank you so much for watching.